Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel, and today I'm doing another interview. My guest today is super exciting. They are a playwright called Mark Wheeler. They've written shows such as Chicken and Too Much Punch for Judy. So you guys may have studied them at GCSE drama, or you may have heard of Mark's writing as well. So today Mark will be joining me.
Mark Wheeler, and I've written a few plays.
Thank you so much for coming, Mark. So today we're going to be talking about your playwright career. My first question is, when did you first get into the playwriting world?
Into the theatre world via my dad when I was about 14, who introduced me to a local operatic company, and I really enjoyed that. I saw also that same year, this was 1973, David Bowie performing his Ziggy Stardust tour. And that was my introduction to watching theatre and seeing what magic it could be. And then I wrote songs, and I wanted them to be performed. And that was in the sixth form, that local groups weren't prepared to perform my songs. So I decided to get a friend who was cleverer than me to write a play, and I interspersed the play with songs, producing a musical. And then organised the kids in the lower school to do the musical. Eventually, to cut a long story short, I ran out of people to write the play bits, so I had to do it. I always thought it would be way too difficult for me. So I started that when I became a drama teacher when I was about 20. I became a drama teacher when I was 21, and I ran out of people to write plays for me when I was 23.
Yeah, well, your early career and the beginning of your career sounds super kind of exciting, and it's great to hear like you kind of got other people involved in kind of the first project you did. So a recent play you've written is Game Over. So first of all, what's that play about, and what was it like writing that?
It's an awful tragedy about a boy called Breck Bednar who was murdered gruesomely in an online grooming situation. And I became involved in that via another play I'd just written called I Love You Mum, I Promise I Won't Die, which was about a boy who had, again, tragically died of taking MDMA and at a rave, and all the right things were not around to be able to help him. The two mums, Breck's mum and Fiona, Daniel's mum, knew each other, and they spoke to each other, and that's how I became involved in Breck's story. So yeah.
Yeah, well, that sounds super cool. I know it's like such a tragic story, but I think it's great how you kind of write plays about it to spread awareness, I guess you could say. And I think it's definitely kind of like the story and how you managed to write that is super inspiring.
What I always wanted to do was to produce plays that would grip the youngsters that I taught. So that was always my intention. Game Over was one of the first plays I wrote after I left teaching, so I didn't have a group to perform it. But always I would be looking for things that would grip the young people I was working with. That's what I wanted to do, because I found that the plays out there actually didn't do that to a large extent. Not always, but I couldn't guarantee finding something that would grip them.
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of a great reasoning to write your plays, because I think kind of the younger generation are going to be the next generation of adults. So I think it's always important to kind of educate them in that way. So do you have any advice to people who want to get into the playwriting or theatre world?
Get your plays performed and then get them reviewed, and let people know about it. And I can only say that because as someone who was unknown, the way I became known was in that way, by just putting yourself out there. So if we were doing a performance of a play, we wouldn't just do 3 nights in our school. We'd enter a drama festival and have an adjudication, and someone would then write a review of it in a local paper. We'd take it to festivals further afield, so we go to Edinburgh. So you can't expect anybody else to do that for you. So I had to do that for myself, and the young people I worked with were amazingly helpful, and I think out of it for them, other things came. Many have gone on to have careers themselves, but not all, and some of them just had great fun doing that at school, and are really good focused activity. And I would also say that extracurricular activities at school are way more important than any of the stuff you do within the curriculum.
I think that's some great advice, and I definitely agree kind of what you were saying about having to kind of promote your play yourself. I think you kind of have to sometimes create opportunities for yourself, and I think that is some great advice.
Definitely, it's the way forward.
Yes, it is. So, one of your most performed plays is Chicken, which has been performed almost 6,000 times. So, what was it like writing that play, and how does it feel to kind of see that it's been performed that amount of times?
Someone came up to me whilst we were doing Too Much Punch for Judy and said to me, if you don't write a play for a junior school age group about road safety, someone else will. And so it was the first time I'd ever consciously gone into writing a play purely to fulfill a gap in the market. And it worked amazingly well. That's a source of great surprise to me that was as successful as it was, not because it's not very good, but just because every other play that I wrote a musical about football, for example, which I expected to be a big hit, and it wasn't. So anything that I tended to write that I wanted to be a hit kind of wasn't. But other things like Chicken, but Chicken is the only one I did that I intended to be a hit, and it was.
Yeah, well, that's great that it was a hit, and it must be super exciting to kind of see that many schools and students perform that play because it does have such a strong message.
Well, that's really nice. You say that, and it's amazing because I was in Dubai, and there was a group performing it in Dubai, and it's like, what? How come you even know about this? But so it's interesting that you asked. I don't think I've ever been asked about Chicken in an interview, other than an interview specifically set up about Chicken. Have you done it at your school then?
No, we haven't done it at my school, but I have heard about it, so I was interested to see what kind of happened with it. So, in terms of your career, what goals do you have for kind of the next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? Like, what would you like to see?
Well, my career has been very weird in the last year because during the lockdown, the publishing company suddenly closed down because of COVID. And so all my plays weren't going to become available. So I was then surprisingly taken on by a new independent publisher called Salamander Street. And so my kind of 2-year plan is to get all of the stuff that I had out before out again, but not just having it out again and improved. So everything that we've put out with Salamander Street, we've made sure there's either new material in there for teachers to look at, or the play has been improved somehow. So at the moment, so for example, today I've been doing a proofread of a book that I did nearly 10 years ago, that just looking to improve it.
Yeah, well, I think those are kind of some great goals, and it's also nice to hear kind of when the publishing company did close down, it's lovely to hear that another one reached out to you. I think it'll be interesting to kind of see the plays be republished and to see what's changed.
With Too Much Punch, lots has changed because things have come out recently that are new information. So with that in particular, there was an opportunity to change it. So that has got a changed text because new bits of the story came out. With some of them, it's just I've released old. So, for example, with Hard to Swallow, we've put at the back of the book some old bits of the script that we used in a never performed version of the script. So we've just, trying to make it different and interesting and worthwhile republishing.
Yeah, it definitely does sound interesting, and it's kind of great to hear you're kind of updating the scripts in the books, I guess you could say. So, as you just mentioned, Too Much Punch for Judy is one of your most performed plays. Within that play, you did speak to a lot of the people involved in the incident. So, what was it like talking to them and hearing their stories?
So, literally all the words in that play, other than the Bob and Knob bit, are from the real people who were involved. Because I don't see any point in guessing how people might respond or react to some kind of awful situation like that. I want to have it from their. It's more authentic if it's their words. What was it like talking to them? Well, Judy, whose real name is Tony, was very brave because I was only 26, probably. very inexperienced. I'd done one play that had been published before that. So for her to offer to come forward and tell me the story about something so horrific as what she'd gone through was an incredibly brave decision. And I hadn't had any training for doing interviews like this, so it was just me going in I'd had teacher training, but nothing like this. And I always find it an honour to speak to people. And the one thing I can remember at interviewing Tony was her breaking down at the point that she said, "Not my beautiful sister." And so I always, when I'm working with students on that line, I always say, when she remembered that, she broke down trying to tell me. And I can remember saying to her, "Do you want to stop now, or do you want to continue?" She said, "No, I'll be all right. I'll just get a cup of tea and then we'll continue." But she really wanted to talk.
I think that's quite inspiring to kind of hear, even though it got quite deep and really hard, that she did want to get her story across, because I think that's super important. Just out of interest, have you heard from the people you interviewed since then or not?
Some of them have become friends. So, for example, in Too Much Punch with Judy, no, I kept in touch with Tony for a short while afterwards. Then I moved, and then in the days where there wasn't Facebook and so on, you just not fall out, but you fall out of contact. So I was on Christmas card contact with Tony until the second accident, and then things changed when she went to prison. Graham Salmon, for example, who I wrote the play about, The World's Fastest Blind Runner, which I would say is one of the best plays I've done. I stayed in contact with him throughout his life, and Mari Salmon, his wife, is a godparent to our children. Fiona Spargo-Mabs, we're very close friends. We work together. She's working on developing a new version of Happy Soap with me. So we're working together on all sorts of things. So yeah, I stay in contact with the young people in the plays as well that were in my youth theatre.
Oh, that's lovely to hear, and I think it's also lovely as well to hear some of them have become part of your life and some of them even your friends. If you could pick, what has been the best moment in your career?
There are a number, but probably the one that I would have to say is something that I didn't expect to be that good, which was we were invited to perform Hard to Swallow at the National Theatre, and having the honour of having that performed in the National Theatre when I was quite young was quite incredible. What's been very sad is that it's never happened again. Perhaps that's the thing that would be really good if something like that happened again.
Yeah, well, that does sound like an absolutely kind of jaw-dropping moment to have something that you wrote and to be performed in such a kind of high-level theatre in the country. But yeah, fingers crossed, maybe we'll see another one of your plays performed in the future. You never know.
Well, maybe you'll make that happen.
Maybe. We'll have to see. What has it been like watching schools perform your plays across the world and also across the country?
I have a really bad memory, so I go to see plays and it's like, I wonder what's going to happen next, and I haven't got a clue I've got the basic trajectory, but I forget little details, and I love having the surprise of, oh yeah, that was really good actually. It's a great surprise to me that these plays that were done in a very urban comprehensive schools are actually on lists of plays that people exam boards set for examinations alongside Shakespeare and playwrights who are commissioned by the National Theatre. And there's us in the corner of Southampton and the corner of Epping, working in a little unfunded youth theatre with a budget of zero and putting on plays with some sticks rather than any kind of set or anything. I think it's fantastic accolade to all of us and them to have done that against all these other people who are given multiple thousands of pounds to put the plays on in grand theatres.
Yeah, that definitely is incredible, and I think it's also lovely that even though you wrote the plays, I guess also like people can put their own take on how they perform the plays.
And that's what I like. If I go to see a play, I don't want to see what I've done with them. I want to see what they've done with them. So that's always my biggest interest.
Yeah, definitely, and it must be great to see. So, what is the best thing, in your opinion, about being a playwright?
I was a teacher for nearly 40 years. So the best thing about being a teacher was all the relationships that you have with all the people that you work with and the collaborativeness. That trained me eventually to be able to be a playwright when I retired from teaching. And the best thing about being a playwright is that I can sit up here quietly and just get on with writing plays, earn a bit of money, and then also earn a bit of money from things that I'm not even having to do now because they're things I did before. So I think it's a kind of cheeky way of earning money.
Yeah, well, I mean, that definitely is a benefit from it, and I think as long as you kind of enjoy playwriting, it's always something great to do.
It becomes an obsession, Charlie, actually. I think one of the things is that I just want to get on. I'm very kind of obsessed, and I want to get doing the next thing and get this completed so I can move on to the next thing, which is a good and bad thing.
Yeah, well, I think that's quite a positive attribute to have. And are there any future plays on the way for us to expect?
I've just completed a commission for a school in London of a play called Pandemic Explosion, which is a play which started off being about the pandemic, and then some of the people that were being interviewed actually went away. It's an international school. They went away to Beirut, so they were involved in the huge explosion in Lebanon, in Beirut, the port. And so it kind of it's about the pandemic, and then suddenly that's topped by this awful situation in Beirut. And it also, one of the people I interview is a young rapper called Tyrone, who I don't know whether you know, but he's an up-and-coming rapper. He's just had a #1 with Anne-Marie and Nathan Dorr.
Oh, yeah, I know who he is now, yeah.
And he's told his story of his time during the pandemic. So, you know, there's the difference in stories of some ordinary school kids, Tyrone, these guys who were in Beirut, and then that led us to some people who did some charity work in Beirut. So that's quite a broad set of topics within one play. And it's the story of 1.5 years.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to hearing that play because it's got a lot of storylines within it, but I guess the pandemic does link it all together, which sounds really cool.
We've all lived through that, and it's all been very strange for all of us, but particularly for people of your age, and I really feel for you.
Yeah, definitely, and I think because we can all relate to the play, I think it'll definitely be something special to people. So, over the years, have you had any kind of weird things happen in your playwriting career or any stories that you want to share?
The weirdest didn't happen, but it was an offer whilst I was writing Too Much Punch for Judy from Tony's mum, who said, "Would you like to interview Joe?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Well, she used to work for an entertainment agency. Joe is the lady who died in the car accident." And she said, one of the people who Joe worked with, she worked in an entertainment agency, is Doris Stokes, who is a medium. And I can arrange a session with Doris, and Joe has her own views about the accident. And I really regret not having taken her up on that, because I thought, I don't know whether that would be authentic, but that would have been a really, really, really interesting thing to do with someone who at the time, Doris Stokes, was the medium to do these things. I was a bit scared, to be honest, and a bit young, and a bit, no, I don't think I'll do that. So that's a regret I've had, and it's a story that didn't happen, that possibly should have happened.
Yeah, well, that would have been interesting to see what that would have been about, but I guess we can't change the past, and the play's still as good as it is.
I was told by Tony's mum that Joe turned up and watched the play when we performed it at Harlow Playhouse, and we had to leave 2 seats available for them.
Oh, well, that's nice to kind of hear that she got to be part of it, hopefully. So that sounds amazing. So we have came to the end of the interview now, and it's been amazing chatting about your career and kind of the playwriting side of your life. So thank you so much for taking the time to do it.
Thank you for taking the time to interview me and thinking of me. Thank you.
You're most welcome. And also thank you to everybody who watched the interview. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you soon for another one. Bye, guys.